All right, welcome to the study group. Welcome back, Chuck.
Thank you, Derek.
Welcome back, everyone at home. Kitty's out in the yard chasing snakes somewhere. But we're just going to dive right back into part 2 of real thinking. We kind of introduced the way that our decisions and as we make our decisions in our mind, we're choosing to become more spiritual or not. And that's reflective of becoming more real.
Mm-hmm.
And that in our inner life, we're never alone. Our conversation is always communal. God is always there with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're going to kind of take it to the next installment of real thinking. And just, that quote from paper 110, so few mortals are real thinkers. And this isn't to make fun of anyone or anything like that. It's just strictly as we're friends and we're going to give some friendly advice from some of the fruit that we've pulled out of this revelation and things that have helped us and hopefully can help others.
Yeah, right. Yeah, life is always a challenge. And I think we're appreciative of the fact that the Urantia book does give us these challenges from time to time. They're saying, become a real thinker. It'll make everything better. Make your life better. It'll make you more useful. Your service will be more fulfilling and effective. Just so many things about life will be better. It would depend on the quality of our thinking. So that's why they're kind of nudging us and spurring us along in this direction.
Yeah.
So we'll just see a little bit more about how this works out in the second installment.
Yeah. And how it unfolds, how we kind of see that we get a role to play in kingdom building as opposed to a passive observer.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm just going to get into the first quote here.
Did the definitions or no?
Well, they can always look at the old one, but let me bring it up and then you guys can you can pause it if you want to on YouTube.
Yeah, we covered these in the last podcast. So just know it's here if you want to rewind or back up and pause on this to read them. But these will help to inform the quotes we're going to look at today.
Yeah, because we're going to be using some of these terms. All right, well, let's get started.
Sure.
Real thinking part 2. So I'm just going to read all 3 of these quotes and then we'll discuss. Prayer is self-reminding, sublime thinking. While divine or spiritual insight is a gift, human wisdom must evolve. And the thought adjuster is not trying to control your thinking as such, but rather to spiritualize it, to eternalize it. The adjusters are dedicated to improving, modifying, adjusting, and coordinating your thinking process. So I like this this pattern here of how it's evolving here, that prayer, sublime thinking, self-reminding. Self-reminding, it reminds me of reminding that we're not alone.
Right.
And that there's this sublime thinking in conversation like we were talking about in the last podcast. And then this insight that we get in that sublime thinking and that invitation for sublime relationship, we get this insight and it's a gift, but it doesn't stop there. We're asked to now seize that gift and manifest it into reality, into an expression that hasn't been here before. And then the adjuster is constantly trying to help, like a good coach, steer us in a way that we can discern those values within these eternal lessons that are being flashed to us in our insight. And then as we as the adjuster coordinates this practice that we have, become more attuned to what that game really is. Right.
One of the things they say about our adjusters, which just to explain, is the spirit presence of God within us, the presence of the Spirit of God that lives within our minds. They say that one of the things that our adjuster does is present picturizations of destiny. And I think that's a really interesting way of the adjuster has of doing all these things. In other words, you get a flash or an insight or an intuition about a possibility. And then that has an organizing effect. If it's something we really desire and it lifts our motivation. Yeah, I really want that, right? So that has an organizing effect on our thinking because we have to direct our thinking toward that goal. And in doing that, our thinking is improved, it's adjusted, it's coordinated in these ways.
What has this eternal anchor point, this direction where it's going towards.
Right. It's trying to achieve something that's currently beyond reach. And this idea about prayer, I think, is very interesting, too, because it ties in with where we left off in the last podcast about sharing the inner life with God.
Right.
The sharing our thinking with God. So when we pray, we're essentially just talking to God, but we're reminding ourselves that we have this relationship with God. And that's what uplifts the thinking into to another level. Like if you sit down in the room with someone like an elder, let's say, who you have utmost respect for, and you really want to be there and engage in the most fruitful way possible, you're going to kind of sit up straight. You're going to pay attention to your thinking. You're going to pay attention to what you're saying. And all of that can reach a kind of a sublime level when we engage that way with God.
Yeah.
Thinking of God that way.
Yeah. The code of conduct goes up.
Something like the standard.
The standard is raised.
Yeah, the principles that come
and that's what the
play.
thought adjusted, the indwelling particle of perfection within us is showing us, flashing us these new standards of potential that we are new potential standards that we can step into. Exactly.
And just quickly on this second one, what I think is interesting about that is it shows that there's two sort of parts to the development of our thinking. There's the gifts we receive of spirit insight, and then there's also the effort that we put in to evolving our human wisdom. So evolving our human wisdom requires our efforts. That's where we have to think. You have to say, okay, I got to make some decisions here. What's the best approach? So that's where the evaluation comes in and all of that. Mm-hmm. So we receive gifts, but then we have to use those gifts. Mm-hmm. And those gifts can apply to our development of human wisdom. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what comes out of all this.
And how important it is to use them.
Yes.
So they don't just kind of rot on the vine.
Right,
These
exactly.
are fruits that we can kind of pick and use to support.
Mm-hmm.
And if they just stay there, that's what being spoiled is. They just kind of spoil on the vine.
So the spirit insights are usually about values, because that's usually where we get hung up. We're trying to make a decision. You can't make up your mind. There's usually a value issue there that needs to get sorted out. Mm-hmm. So that's where the spirit can come in and help us with that.
Help coordinate those values.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's cool. All right. Well, let me get into this next one. There exists in all personality associations of the cosmic mind, that's us, a quality which might be denominated the reality response. These responses are self-evident to clear reasoning and deep thinking minds. These levels of reality are 1. Causation, 2. Duty, 3. Worship. Scientific, moral, and spiritual insights are innate in the cosmic mind, which endows all will creatures. So I love this. The experience of this process is something that I've experienced in myself. This innate scientific, moral, and spiritual insights that we have from being endowed with the cosmic mind, that then you get flashed these creative insights.
That builds on all that.
Yeah, it's building these values and these meanings in those values, and that I immediately get seized with this nudging towards it's a higher calling that I could do, and that I have almost a duty to do that for myself and for God and for the kingdom and for just the supreme being of all that is. Like, it's just what I have to do, you know? Yeah. And then if I stay loyal to that and actually do see it out, the results of that is something that's otherworldly that I never could have expected. And then that's what then throws me into worship, where I'm like, thank you, God, for this opportunity to serve.
Yeah. Right. There's like a synergy that goes on with these three capacities that we have. And it's interesting how they describe them as a reality response. It's like our innate capacity to recognize reality. So when you feel the wind blow and you feel the leaf and you see the leaves moving, right? You know there's a causation there. This is inherent in the physical level. And our mindedness enables us to recognize causation on the physical level. One thing leads to another, right? There's causes and effects. And that's just a basic understanding of reality that's inherent in our cosmic mind endowment. And then building on that is the recognition of duty or that there's a morality, there's better choices, better and worse choices.
And there's a call to action.
In any situation, right. So you're called to do what's best. So that urge to do what's best is, again, just part of our innate mind endowment if we don't suppress it or override it,
or allow an external influence to supersede
supersede it.
Instead of the internal thought adjuster that can allow, good coaching.
Good coaching, right. And then finally, crowning it all, we have this innate capacity to just realize that there's something greater than ourselves out there. I didn't create this reality. I woke up in this reality. What's going on? And what are the greater, who's the,
Right.
Yeah. How do I relate to the creative forces that brought reality into existence?
And it's a humbling process, too.
Yeah. And that's where it's kind of the worship urge factors into that.
Exactly.
So the cosmic mind, just to clarify, in our case, is downstepped into 7 adjuvant mind spirits that we covered in a previous podcast. So the Mother Spirit does that. She downsteps the cosmic mind, delivers it to us in these 7 types of understanding that then create our consciousness. But as we ascend in the universe, we'll grow closer and closer to having a direct endowment of cosmic mind. But it's these characteristics are present in all manifestations of cosmic mind, even when downstepped in our case. So that's what they're telling us here.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of martial arts in the belting system where you have to ascend the belts, but almost to a sense where the testing is there's a spontaneity and improvisation and creativity that's required, not just memorizing certain forms or creeds.
Yeah, and that pulls all of these in. You have to recognize the causation that's going on, but then you also want to bring goodness into it somehow to make it effective and purposeful. And then the achievement of that, whenever we achieve anything good, we always give thanks and appreciation for, the the spirit gifts that enable our higher achievements.
Yeah. I say opportunity, but it's really just the thrill of getting to serve.
Yeah.
Because it's a good feeling.
Right. So another way to look at these 3, it's sort of like features of our operating system. That's another way to think about it. If you think of our mind as an operating system, these are the features that are given to us along with our
causation, duty, and worship.
Our ability to recognize those 3 things, to have that capacity for recognition, that capacity for reality response on those 3 levels.
Well, I think it's important that we, going into this to lead into the next slide, how important it is to then work this out in your inner mental laboratory. It doesn't just kind of come in this passive acceptance. There's actually work that one needs to do. That's why I always look at it as like a laboratory where you're making experiments and testing things.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have disasters, but you pick yourself back up. And,
you learn.
Yeah, you're learning. And in the citadel of the spirit, or in your temple within oneself, that's the safe bastion. That's where you can go, where you can make these mistakes and learn with spirit.
And talk things over.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So here we have Jesus.
Yeah.
When he was 13. Bless his heart. It's so cute. This was during their first visit to Jerusalem, Jesus with his parents. And they say about Jesus, again and again during the Passover week, his parents would find Jesus sitting off by himself with his youthful head in his hands, profoundly thinking. So young Jesus was experiencing all of this for the first time, the temple in Jerusalem and everything that was going on there. While at the same time, all these understandings about himself were starting to emerge in his mind. And he was just like, oh my God.
There's a huge train wreck.
Yeah, right. I got to
between the demonstration of supposed spiritual rituals versus the true values that he's felt in his heart of God the Father.
Yeah. How am I going to resolve this? I've got a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So then they describe here, this is when Jesus is a little older, but maybe even then as well. They say that Jesus possessed the ability effectively to mobilize all his powers of mind, soul, and body on the task immediately in hand. He could concentrate his deep thinking mind on the one problem which he wished to solve. So the big takeaway for me from this is that Jesus had problems to solve, just like we do. So life in many ways is a problem-solving adventure. We've got, all kinds of things to figure out, how to move forward, how to, actually make progress toward the visions we have of possibility, and problems always come up. Problems come up in relationships. They come up in the material affairs of our lives. They come up on every level. So to be able to concentrate our thinking the way Jesus, the way they describe here about Jesus, is a powerful capacity to have if we're going to make progress in solving our problems.
So, mobilizing all his powers of mind, soul, and body, all of them. Right.
It's like laser focus of all his capacities. And it's interesting, they include body in that.
Yeah.
That there's a presence in the mother spirit that we can feel in our bodies that adds to our more intellectual, perhaps, process of thinking in the mind. But then there's our soul too, which is where we've realized we've had some value realizations and actually manifested some growth in ourselves, where we're starting to unite spirit with matter and our physical nature. And as all of this emerges, all those capacities can get focused.
Well, and that's what you're talking about, of lifting up the standard, the quality of standard.
Exactly.
And like, from my experience, the martial arts was like that, where it's like, okay, we're going to take this to a whole nother level because our life will potentially be on the line. But this I appreciate deeper because it's your soul that is growing. It's not to stop death in the spiritual sense. You're growing beyond the material and let that die, because we're identifying with our soul. And if we can find a practice that allows for us to integrate all of this, the threefold mechanism of our identity, mind, body, and soul, then good on you, man. Yeah. You can create your own practice to do this, to connect in your full identity and then express fully. That's really embodying the way.
And a huge part of that process is the development of principles, which we talked about in the last podcast. But principles are inherently dynamic. They sort of create the channel for the river, but without defining the outcomes. In other words, they're the sort of the guide to what our standards are. So we use sort of love as an example in the last one. If you hold love in your mind as a principle, that I want everything I do to be true to that principle, then that has a huge influence.
And it allows for freedom for the individual to create within, because it's a framework that allows for individual uniqueness to express. It's not a law. It's not saying either it's white or black, either you broke the law or you fulfilled the law. This is allowing for an environment where one can uphold the principles of God in love, but also reflect their individual uniqueness and their inherent creative abilities.
Right. Allows the unfolding of our true nature, development of our true nature.
Which we all have.
Yeah.
So that kind of takes us to the next one here.
Okay, so these two quotes here are going to kind of sum things up, I think, pretty well, hopefully. Here they say the determiner of the differential of spiritual presence, meaning how much of spirit is there in your life, exists in your own hearts and minds, and consists in the manner of your own choosing, in the decisions of your minds, and in the determination of your own wills. So that lays the responsibility right in our own laps to have command over the extent to which we can have these spirit achievements. And I love this quote from Zoroaster, which, as we're informed, it's part of the collection, the compilation in paper 131 that Jesus and Gannon put together at the Library of Alexandria, trying to find the best teachings of the existing world religions, not only the best teachings, but the ones that were directly influenced by the Salem missionaries. So here in this quote, we get a sense of not only Zoroaster, but also the teaching of the Salem missionaries.
And Melchizedek.
And Melchizedek, going back to Melchizedek. Right, exactly. So I love how this is just put so simply. He says, through our good thinking, the wise Creator will enable us to do His will, thereby attaining the realization of all that is divinely perfect.
Yeah, that's that causation, duty, worship thing.
Right. And it's also that spirit of collaboration with the Creator.
Right.
That sense of communal consciousness, sharing the inner life, all of that. So if we can provide the good thinking, right? Thinking guided by the values of truth, beauty, and goodness, the wise Creator will take that effort on our part, and that will enable us to do His will. So this is always the challenge with life, is doing the Father's will, because He doesn't just say, do this, 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 and that. We have to kind of figure it out, right? We know it's there as a potential, but it's up to us to grow into the realizations that are necessary to actually make that happen in our own actions. And through doing that, then we'll attain the realization of all that is divinely perfect. I mean, that's the destiny that follows from doing the Father's will.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how even Salem missionaries, Melchizedek, Zoroaster attaches this to good thinking.
Good thoughts, good words, good deeds.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a integrity and accountability in that whole process. You're never losing. You're never slipping your communion with God.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you might not make mistakes once in a while, or errors in judgment. Who knows? That all happens. But it gives us the foundation and the kind of the energy of spirit to pick ourselves up and try again, learn from our mistakes. And that's part of this process. So that is all tied up in our thinking and evolution of our wisdom and all of that.
Yeah, and I would say from my experience, it's much more liberating in my thinking to remember that I'm secure and safe and loved, and I'm assured of that.
Yeah.
This trust, faith, and assurance,
Yeah.
This, otherwise, it really I could get blocked down from having this liberation of being able to engage in a loving way, because it's lighthearted. It's
right.
not as self-important, and it allows for me to get out of my condition, which is turning into dust anyway by the moment, and connect to that which is becoming eternal.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Well, and we were just reading last night that the mercy credits, they know we're going to make mistakes, but they give us this lavish account of mercy credits that we can never exhaust as long as we're sincere of purpose and honest of heart. So those are kind of the conditions that we establish within ourselves that gives us access to these lavish mercy credits, which will carry us through all the things that go wrong. Because it's all about getting closer to God. And sometimes those experiences are necessary.
It's like sincere. It's like, tell the truth. Just tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be the truth. Don't lie to yourself.
And have a sincere purpose.
Yeah.
To feel a sense of purpose in your life that's sincere and greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And be honest about that in your heart.
Own it, because there's this tendency to dissociate those responsibilities, those duties to somebody else. And then you can always be a victim.
Right.
Blame somebody else for not doing what you were supposed to do anyway.
Yeah, we get very passive. Which is not really what moves us forward, obviously.
But we're creators, and we have lots of demonstrations of that.
Yeah, everybody has their own version of that. Their own calling.
Well, cool. All right. Well, I hope this two-part podcast was good for you guys and helped unleash new potentials in your way of thinking. And I super appreciate it. So thank you, Chuck.
Yeah. And please share thoughts, comments, suggestions.
Yeah. And
get involved. This is not just us. This is everybody.
Yeah. This is like an educational group, and let's just be friends and see how we can help each other. If you're watching this on the app, the Urantia Book Network app, we'll put the slides in the comments. So it's a live stream, and then you could just look in the comments on the timeline, and you can download the app of the study aids. And as always, thanks for joining us.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Chuck. Good job on this one.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, everyone at home. God bless.
All right. Next time.